In 1814, a British administrator named Thomas Stamford Raffles discovered Borobudur, a 9-story temple with 2,700 relief panels buried under volcanic ash for 1,000 years. But here's what historians still can't explain. Your financial legacy, like this temple, can vanish from sight in just one generation. The temple didn't disappear because it was buried. It disappeared because an entire civilization simply stopped acknowledging it existed, erasing it from memory while the jungle did the physical work. For nearly a millennium, Borobudur vanished not because people couldn't find it, but because they chose to forget it was ever there. And the reason why rewrites everything we thought we knew about how civilizations collapse. It's 1814. Java is under British administration, barely 2 years into an occupation that won't last. A local Javanese informant, a man named Kiai Tumenggung Buminoto, walks into the office of Thomas Stamford Raffles in Batavia and hands him a handwritten note. In it, he describes a strange hill south of Magelang, deep in the Kedu Plain, half swallowed by jungle. Local villagers call it Bukit Sagara, the hill of the sea. They won't go near it at night. They say it's cursed. Raffles sends a Dutch engineer named H.C. Cornelius to investigate. What Cornelius finds after 6 weeks of clearing jungle and digging through volcanic debris is not a hill at all. It's a temple, 9 terraces high, covering an area of 2,500 square meters, carved with nearly 2,700 individual relief panels, and it had been sitting there, sealed under ash and roots and silence, for almost 1,000 years. The question that's haunted historians ever since isn't how it was built. It's why everyone who knew it existed simply stopped talking about it. To understand what was lost, you have to understand what Borobudur actually was. Built during the Sailendra dynasty, somewhere between 760 and 830 AD, it isn't simply a temple. It's a 3-dimensional map of the Buddhist cosmos. The square lower terraces represent Kamadhatu, the world of human desire. The middle tiers rise into Rupadhatu, the realm of form. At the top, 3 circular platforms hold 72 lattice stupas, each containing a seated Buddha, and at the very summit stands a single central stupa representing Arupadhatu, the formless realm, pure enlightenment. Pilgrims were meant to walk its galleries in a specific direction, ascending the cosmological levels physically as they ascended spiritually. The entire structure is a journey, a lesson in stone. It took, by conservative estimates, tens of thousands of workers, and perhaps 75 years to complete. And then around 930 AD, the Sailendra dynasty's power collapsed. The royal court shifted east. And in the records I've kept, cross-referencing Javanese chronicles, Chinese trade documents, and volcanic sediment studies, the picture that emerges is more complicated than a simple political migration. But before I get to what those records actually show, the part the standard history skips past, there's something about the temple itself that nobody fully explains. Something that was noticed the moment Cornelius's team began clearing the lowest tier. The base of Borobudur is hidden, not by jungle, not entirely by ash. The lowest level, a full terrace of elaborate carved reliefs depicting scenes of karma, of cause and effect, of consequence, was deliberately encased in an outer stone shell. Someone buried those carvings intentionally while the temple was still in use. Archaeologists call this the hidden foot. They debate whether it was a structural fix for the sinking ground or a theological decision to conceal the most explicit depictions of desire and suffering from everyday eyes. What they don't debate enough is the timing. The encasement appears to have been done not long before the abandonment, as if someone was sealing the temple, preparing it for something. Here's where the official story starts to loosen. The standard explanation for Borobudur's disappearance is elegant and partial. Mount Merapi erupted around 930 AD, the Mataram kingdom destabilized, the court moved to East Java, and Borobudur was simply left behind as Buddhism gave way to Hinduism and later Islam across the island. That's true, partially. What the textbooks tend to compress is the scale of the volcanic event and what it actually did to the Kedu Plain. Sediment cores taken from the region show multiple ash deposition events. Not one clean eruption, but a sequence spread across decades that would have made the surrounding land agriculturally hostile. The people who depended on the Kedu Plain didn't just leave because a king moved his court. They left because the land began to fail them. But here's the detail that changes the frame entirely. Borobudur wasn't forgotten by everyone. There is a 16th century Javanese text, the Babad Tanah Jawi, a chronicle of Javanese history, that references a place called Budur in a way that can only be Borobudur. The text doesn't describe ruins. It describes the site as a place of ill omen, connected to the death of a Javanese nobleman who ignored a warning and climbed the hill. The account treats the site not as a lost temple, but as a known, feared location. 3 records I'll walk you through in the next 2 minutes overturn the standard forgotten under ash narrative, and the third was suppressed from the initial Dutch colonial reports for reasons that were, let's say, administratively convenient. The first record is geological. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Archaeological Science confirmed that the ash layers around Borobudur's base are not uniform. There are at least 2 distinct eruption strata, separated by a period of human activity, meaning someone was still working at or around the site after the first volcanic event. The abandonment wasn't sudden. It was a slow withdrawal. Someone kept coming back, and then one day, they stopped. The second record is cartographic. Dutch colonial surveys from 1814 to 1816, the immediate aftermath of Cornelius's excavation, document that local villagers in several nearby settlements had oral traditions describing the stone mountain and its purpose. These weren't vague legends. They included specific details: the number of Buddhas, the circular upper terraces, the correct orientation of the pilgrim's path. This knowledge had survived 1,000 years without the temple being visible. Someone had been keeping the memory alive, even as the jungle swallowed the stones. And then the third record. In the early Dutch colonial reports, there are references to a local Juru Kunci, a traditional keeper of sacred sites, who provided detailed information about the temple's interior layout before excavation fully began. That information was used to guide the dig. But in the published account that Raffles eventually released in his 1817 History of Java, this informant is reduced to a footnote. The official narrative became Raffles and Cornelius discovering a mystery. What I've found in the archives suggests it was closer to a rediscovery, guided by people who had never entirely lost the thread. Few who studied the full scope of Borobudur's abandonment have managed a clean explanation, because the site itself resists one. The sealed lower terrace, the oral traditions that outlived the volcano, the medieval curse text. Each element points not to a civilization that forgot its greatest monument, but to one that made a series of deliberate choices about what to preserve, what to conceal, and what to remember only in whispers. The 72 lattice stupas on the upper terraces each contain a Buddha in a specific hand gesture, a mudra. Most are visible through the stone lattice, but a portion of the stupas have Buddhas whose hands are positioned in the Bhumisparsha gesture, touching the earth, calling the ground itself to witness. In Buddhist tradition, this is the moment the Buddha reached enlightenment and defied the forces trying to erase that moment from history. It is, in the records I've kept, one of the more quietly striking details in all of ancient monument building. A temple built to be a map of the cosmos, sealed in volcanic ash for a millennium, rediscovered by a colonial administrator following a letter, and still, at its summit, ringed by figures whose gesture means, the earth remembers, even when no one is watching. Borobudur was formally inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1991. Restoration began in earnest in the 1970s under a joint Indonesian and international effort that moved over 1 million stones, cleaned them, and reassembled the entire structure. It stands today intact in the Kedu Plain of central Java. The hidden foot, that sealed lower terrace with its carved lessons about consequence, remains buried, exactly as someone left it, roughly 1,100 years ago. Whatever they were protecting it from or preserving it for, the archivist has not yet found a record that says. If you've studied something about Borobudur that doesn't fit the official account, the sealed carvings, the oral keepers, the cursed texts, leave it in the comments. Some records only surface when enough people know to look.